fighting, the flag was raised on the summit of Mount Suribachi, an incident that signified the beginning of the end of the war in the Pacific. Below the summit, fighting went on. Only flamethrowers and grenades and demolition crews could force the Japs out of their 10-foot thick bunkers. A kindly God looked down upon two young men who received a blessing that they would give them the courage they needed. These two men, Duffy and Belton, were given the blessing of each other, natural-born brothers fighting side by side, each giving the other strength to survive through another day. What greater blessing could two brothers need at this time when all hell was loosed around them? Together they knelt in a foxhole, grasping each other's hand, and in turn offered a prayer to our Most High God to give them the wisdom, strength, and the courage to do that day what must be done, and to protect them from all danger from the enemy. And protected they were. Bishop, do you remember this letter you wrote to John W. Bond, an LDS chaplain on duty in the Pacific?
While on the island of Iwo Jima, I learned how great the power of prayer really is, and what great comfort there was knowing our Heavenly Father was with Belton and me at all times. We were under quite heavy fire. One boy was killed to the left of my foxhole. I was just about 25 yards in front of my unit. A mortar landed at my head, so close it covered me with dirt. My platoon sergeant came running over, picked up the boy's rifle who had just been killed, and looked back towards our platoon. He said as he shook his head, "They got Duffy." Back in the line, my brother was asking if I was okay. The sergeant said he thought I was. He said he just didn't have the heart to tell him I was dead. As I crawled out from the dirt, I looked over the edge to see Belton. Yes, he was looking up for my sign that I was okay. I was very glad to be able to give it to him after that shake-up. Belton is a good brother, one who is so loyal. All through the battle, he watched and protected me in everything I did. He covered me when I moved from hole to hole to give my men orders or words of encouragement. In everything he has been the most wonderful brother any fellow could ever have. After we are through this life, I hope he might say the same for me.
You know, Duffy, as my mind goes back over the years, I could probably reflect many things that you and I have done together. There's one thing sure that I wouldn't trust you to do now that I used to do as a youth, and that is to let you shoot a turkey out from under my arm. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the strength that you gave me throughout our time in the service, for the example that you set for me. And even though you, I believe, lost hope, I'd like to thank you for the strength that you gave me to quit the weed and to try to straighten myself up to live in accordance to the teachings of the gospel, because I can honestly say that you've been an example to me, not only as a brother in the gospel, but as my brother who is just older and set the example of righteousness from the time we were very small children right on through till now. I hope that you have many more years in your life, and wish I could be in for the participation of this program that they're presenting in your behalf.
On the morning I was hit, February 27th, we were moving up fast. We were getting everything thrown at us, from snipers, machine guns to rockets, mortars and artillery. We were driving hard to take the ridges to our front. The fire was so intense, they slowed us down to a slow, deliberate movement. Our lieutenant told me to move my men up. I moved up about 25 yards ahead of the lines. All my men came right behind. I told them I was going to move again and for them to hold fast until I gave them the word to come up. As I ran forward, I could find no shell hole close. I ran about 50 yards. There I found a shell hole, safe in the hole, but I had to find a place to move my men. As I peered over the edge, I was hit. It hit my neck, entered my chest, and out my back. I tried to call to tell someone. My voice was not to be used, it seemed. Again I prayed, and this time with all humbleness and fear that trembled in my body. The first words I was able to say were, "No, God, not now." I was then able to call for help. When my lieutenant heard I was hit, he tried to keep it from Belton. Belton knew at once and jumped to come up. The lieutenant grabbed him and told him it wasn't possible to get through to me without getting hit, so for him not to try. He said it was better for one to get killed than to have both of us killed in his attempt to save his brother. Belton made it to me. Not just once, but 3 trips he made in and out of that hole. First, he cut away my shirt and gave me first aid. He returned to the lines and came to the hole with the corpsman, who gave me more treatment. Belton then had to return to get more fire from our guns in order to get me out, which they gave, and I was taken back to the lines. 3 trips he made in and out of there, a place no one thought was possible to get to once. I know beyond a doubt there is nothing impossible when God has his protecting arm around you. He had one around us.
After being wounded, he was put on aboard the Fleet Hospital ship, and later that same day, Belton was brought in with shrapnel wounds in his foot. Although Duffy and Belton were out of the fighting, the war raged on. It wasn't until March 26th that last Japanese was killed and the job on Iwo was finished. As in Bougainville, Corregidor, Guadalcanal, Midway, and now Iwo Jima, some 2,500 men wouldn't be coming home. They sealed their love for democracy with their life's blood. In behalf of all the fighting men of Iwo, those who had given their life and those who were wounded, Lieutenant Ronald B. Gittleton said,
"All that we ever hope to do is follow their example, to show the same unselfish courage in peace that they did in war, to swear by the grace of God and the stubborn strength and power of the human will, their sons and ours shall never suffer these pains again. These men have done their job well. They have paid the ghastly price of freedom."
Both boys were sent to the hospital in the Marianas. It was while Duffy was in the hospital in Guam that he learned he was the father of a sweet little baby girl, Jocelyn, who was born the 6th day of March. Duffy's thoughts at this time were of home.
How long the days seem as I lay in my hospital room waiting for my body to heal. All my thoughts are of home now. Home where a little blonde-headed boy waits for me. Home where my darling wife cradles my new little daughter. Home where mother and father wait to greet me. Oh, home is where I long to be.
When Duffy arrived at the hospital in Hawaii, he was visited by the LDS Servicemen's Coordinator, Castle H. Murphy, who inquired about his experiences. He encouraged Duffy to write them down and send them to Brother Harold B. Lee, so they could be included with other experiences. They were published in the Church News, an LDS Servicemen's edition, August 15, 1945. His testimony should be heard through all the church to strengthen the members' testimony of the power of prayer. In May, orders came to leave the island paradise of Hawaii and go to Corona, California to finish recuperating. He was granted a few days' leave that he eagerly took to go home and bless his little daughter. Then it was back to the hospital. Finally, by September 1945, the long months of separation and the horrors of war were over. Duffy and Josie, Jimmy now 3, and Jocelyn 6 months, picked up the threads of their life and settled down to the wonderful business of living.
Bishop Palmer may have had ambitions to become a lawyer while still in high school, but that dream was many years